of Robert Lewandowski. He wants out, saying, "My time at Bayern is over."
8 straight Bundesliga titles.
Robert Lewandowski writes history.
Lewandowski is the best striker in the world. Oh, he keeps doing it time after time after time. Lewandowski goes through it again. Oh, you just can't do it. You just cannot be that good.
The record they said would never be broken is now his and his alone.
He has to go. They haven't given him any concrete offer. He's 34. He wants a new challenge.
Big news, Robert Lewandowski leaving Bayern and heading to Barca. Welcome into our ESPN FC studios. Kate Murray and Craig Burley here with you. A little later on, we'll be checking in on the Women's Euros, but we will be starting with the big story that Barcelona and Bayern have reached an agreement in principle for the transfer of Robert Lewandowski. As you can see, the papers in Spain very excited about this deal, said to be paying up to 50 million euros at Barca for the 33-year-old. And it would be a 3-year contract. Nader Manua is also with us, but Craig, I will start with you. Last season, Barcelona needed goals. They're going to get that from him, aren't they?
Oh, they're going to get it from him, all right. But they also need to stop the goals at the other end. It's not a one-way street, and they've struggled in that department, and they continue to do so, I think, and will, in my opinion. But yeah, in terms of the attacking options, I think he's been superseded, I think personally, by Karim Benzema, just, although his stats in Germany are fantastic. But yeah, just a brilliant, brilliant player. It kind of tells you where Barcelona are and where the market is, and the lack of depth out there in this department is that they're paying arguably, what, 50 million for a 33-year-old. As good as Robert Lewandowski is, and his stats will tell you, it's an amazing, some amazing figures in there. Got it all. 50 million for a 33-year-old tells you, one, they're desperate, and two, you know, with Haaland moving and Benzema going nowhere, there isn't a glut of guys that will almost guarantee, like Harry Kane and the guys that I mentioned, 25, 30 goals plus a season. So they've paid a premium, it looks like, but they're getting the ready-made thing. Hopefully from his sake for 2 or 3 years, which is a 3-year contract. He'll be 36. It's difficult when you get to that age, but you know, in terms of the next 18 months or so, brilliant, brilliant player.
What do you think, Nader? Robert Lewandowski in the Barca ranks now, is that going to help them challenge Real Madrid for the title next season?
Yeah, you'd like to think so. I think when Lewandowski, he's one of the best nines in the world. You know, we can talk about Benzema and the season that he had last year, but it feels like consistently over the last few, like he's been there. You know, there's been talk about Ballon d'Ors and things like this, breaking records in Germany. You know, he's a spectacular signing. I think for Barcelona and any other team that say would have recruited him, if you were saying you want a 9 that scores goals, Lewandowski is going to be that guy. So I'll be interested to see how he fits in with that team, fits in with the other 25 attacking options that they have. But it's a fantastic signing in my opinion, and I think as well, to give him credit, I think he really looks after himself, because availability is something which he has had for so many years now. So I think when he goes to Barca, even though he is 33, 34 years of age, and you'd be thinking that's a lot of money for somebody of that age, I think his output is still going to be very, very high, and I think it's going to be a long time, in my opinion, before we start to see maybe that sort of age starting to slow him down a little bit.
But it's a challenge, isn't it? It's a challenge.
Of course.
You know, players need a challenge. Some players, some don't. Some happy to sit in their backsides and take the money. But it's a challenge. And let's be honest, you know, Bayern hasn't become, out with the Champions League, a challenge for him. Yeah, I'm not taking away from the goals that he's scored that has helped catapult Bayern to, 10 titles in a row. But it's bordering on embarrassing now. And how do you keep motivating yourself for that? And he goes to Barcelona, an unbelievable club, as you know, having been in Spain, with Real Madrid and Atleti in there. But they've fallen off the cliff, haven't they? Financially, they've fallen off the cliff in terms of the squad. The Messi-esque years of just magic have gone, and it's a rebuild against a Real Madrid side that superseded expectations last year, both domestically and in Europe. But they're not going away, and so the challenge is to take this new young side with a lot of young players that have come through and are coming through, to take that and face the challenge of Real Madrid head on. And that, I think, will make him get out of bed even more in the morning and get to training and drive himself, rather than 11 titles for Bayern in a row. I mean, I'm not taking it away from them, but it's just not a challenge anymore in Germany, in my opinion. This is a huge challenge because we're expecting Atletico Madrid to be in the mix next year. They had an off-season, so it will put the cat among the pigeons in terms of this La Liga title race.
Yeah, and when you talk about a challenge, not so much for him, but maybe for some of those other forwards, the depth that we're seeing with the players they've got in. I mean, let's remember, Nate, it was just Ferran Torres and Aubameyang coming in the last season. Now they could be second choice. What do you make of this? How heavy it's going to be up top for them and the fighting for a place?
Yeah, it is going to be tough, as you say, and I think one thing that sort of goes unnoticed, I think, sometimes in squads is, these guys, they're all capable of starting games week in, week out. So when you end up sitting on the bench for prolonged periods of time, you can be professional, make sure that you're ready, but you will be disappointed. I think any of those guys, if they didn't feel that level of disappointment, then they're in the wrong game, they're in the wrong profession, essentially, because they should strive to be playing week in, week out and making a difference, because that's ultimately, for those guys overall, why they were brought to the football club, whether it's, say, Fati coming through the academy or, say, Aubameyang coming from Arsenal. You weren't brought in to be cover, so to have to sit on the bench, essentially, and be just that, it's going to be greatly disappointing for some of them, but this is the way Barca have done their recruitment. Obviously some players have come up at certain times and maybe there wasn't like the grandest plan in the world, which was started off 2 years ago to bring somebody in, but they've reacted. This is what they have now. It's going to be mega competitive, and I think for them, I guess the hope is that it's going to be fair, but that fair isn't necessarily something that's associated with football. I think Xavi will know who he wants to have in his front line, and very quickly will realise the sort of relationships and people who play well together, because I think as well, looking at the graphic, where's Memphis Depay? I'm pretty sure he's still there, so that's another little ingredient to add to that setup. And yeah, they've certainly got options, but it's just about finding the right ones if they want to try and rise again and be back to who they were.
Good spot, Naden. We were testing you, and you were right. No Memphis Depay on that graphic either.
Yeah, is that a mistake, or is just the graphics not big enough?
No, we were going to bring it up because they are still trying to offload some players as well.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Depay necessarily.
Well, don't forget as well, they played Gavi up in the left-hand side on a few occasions last year in that front three. So, they've been trying to get shot of Samuel and Tite for quite a while. Martin Brathwaite, obviously, or Brathwaite, however you want to pronounce it, I presume, would be surplus to requirements like the rest. And don't forget, Ferran Torres left Man City because game time was tough. Obviously, he probably wanted to go back to Spain as a young man as well. And Barcelona are a huge club, but he's unlikely to get any more game time now at Barcelona than he was at Manchester City. In fact, it might be even less, who knows. And I'm sure when Aubameyang signed, the name of Lewandowski didn't even pop up into the equation, and now all of a sudden he'll find himself, let's be frank about it, unless he's playing off the left-hand side, which he has done a lot for Arsenal, to be fair to him. But he's gone there as this striker that was going to be playing through the middle, and that old-fashioned role is when he was at Dortmund. Unless Lewandowski's injured or getting a rest, he ain't playing either. So yeah, it is important when you look at the big squads, particularly the big juggernauts in European football at the moment. Real Madrid have some options, not all the best, but Liverpool have options, City have options, and in this front line, Barcelona have options. But I go back to it, all these teams that I've mentioned are also strengthening at the back and are strong at the back. Barcelona are not.
I want to just bring up the fact that you did mention Ferran Torres, because yes, it was leaked from a private event this week, but Joan Laporta saying basically that Pep and his men had sold them a player who doesn't score goals, and you can't say anything these days because everybody finds out. This isn't how Ferran Torres expected it to go, is it, Naden?
No, it certainly isn't. It certainly isn't. And I think one thing that was clear, especially from the City side of things, as he was going back to Spain, was that, he wasn't the finished article. There was work that could be done, but they'd seen his potential. They'd seen his ceiling, essentially. So for Barca, if they thought that they were bringing in the finished article and everything was going to be perfect, I think they were ultimately missing the point. But it's not like he's just appeared out of the blue. He was known. I think he was playing for the Spanish national side. They knew his ups, they knew his downs. So I think for him to go over there and to not just his straight away and to have not scored a ton of goals, that shouldn't be the biggest of surprises, in my opinion. But then for Laporta, him saying that and essentially being caught out, obviously he's not going to be happy with that. But choose your words, I guess, because at the end of the day, the player's probably going to hear that, and is that going to help him score more goals now? Probably not, especially as he's probably going to spend a lot more time sitting on the bench. So now they're going to be looking at that move thinking, was it the right move in the time? And for him again, because there was talk that he was homesick when he was in Manchester, even though he's back in Spain, before you know it, he might be thinking, well, I don't feel welcome here either because here's what the president's saying and now I don't even get game time as well. So it's a very interesting situation, but Barca shouldn't be surprised unless they are the most reactive team in history, because Ferran Torres, people knew what he was like before he signed for Barcelona. So for them to be surprised, I think is missing the point.
Did he really say that?
Yeah, well, he was at a private event, basically like an event, a Johan Cruyff tribute, and he said Pep and Chiqui, it was a bit of a joke to them.
Yeah.
They sold us Ferran Torres and he doesn't score goals, but there was some more things said, but that was leaked.
Well, I'm hoping he was just tongue-in-cheek, because if not, it's just a stupid comment.
I think it's definitely tongue-in-cheek, but it doesn't help, right?
Oh, I mean, it doesn't help the young player. I mean, this is a young man who, after one game last season, I believe, when he missed a hatful of chances, cried. So there's some mental torture going on already in his head, and that's not an easy thing to get rid of. But listen, they coveted the player. Yeah, he wanted to go back, but they coveted him, and they signed him when he was injured. He was actually injured when they signed him. So, but as Nedum said, he's a Spanish international. There's a reason City took him over. They thought he was a good player. They thought he could work with them, but it was going to take time. They wanted to go back to Spain. Barcelona wanted him, but it's maybe going to take time. But you don't sell people duds. You have to want to buy the player, and they did. So, but yeah, clearly I think there's a little crisis of confidence from Ferran Torres, and that certainly won't help.
Let's take a look at how things are going over at Bayern Munich then, the club that Robert Lewandowski is leaving for Barcelona. They had the Bayern players presented today. Sadio Mane there. These images across Bayern Munich's social media. Bayern have come out again though and rejected a move for Cristiano Ronaldo. There's been a lot of talk about this. His mum has even liked a post on Instagram where somebody has superimposed Cristiano Ronaldo in a Bayern shirt, Nedum. Are you surprised? Can you understand Bayern saying that they don't want Cristiano Ronaldo?
Do you know what? Social media and just 24-hour sports news is incredible. We're looking at seeing where Cristiano Ronaldo's mum's liking tweets and things like that on Instagrams.
That's where we're at.
Yeah, I can understand for Bayern, saying that maybe he's too old. They understand his output. They understand how many goals he's scored. That's Ronaldo. That's what he does. But are they a club now that Lewandowski's left? Are they going to try and build again? Are they going to be looking for somebody in their mid-20s, early 20s, to try and future-proof their success? Because for Ronaldo, as much as he is incredible, if he's still doing it in 5-6 years' time, I feel like that would be quite a surprise. Because surely you can't be having a 42-year-old leading your line, essentially. But he is an incredible player, and everybody knows that. And I hate the fact you have to put that as a disclaimer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's the right guy to go to every single club in every situation. Because for some, they've got different plans and different ideas. And I think they do respect him. They respect his goal record, because this is it, in the air, right foot, left foot, that's for Ronaldo. But for Bayern, they're turning a page and maybe looking at a different direction, but they do appreciate how great he is as a player. But unfortunately, Ronaldo isn't the right guy in this particular moment.
They've got a vacancy, Craig. Why don't they want him?
Because they brought in a young coach in Julian Nagelsmann a year or whatever, 18 months ago, whatever it was, and this club are evolving, this team are evolving. No Boateng anymore, obviously for a wee while ago, from a year or so ago. No, Sula's gone. Lewandowski's, as we sit here, is likely to be moving. Thomas Muller is still there, but he's in the twilight of his career. So things are, I think as Nedum was touching on there, things are starting to evolve. It's a natural involvement of a team. And there's not a desperation, as there are for one or two others, to bring in, Barcelona are a little desperate for a striker, because guess what? Real Madrid are sitting top of the tree again. Chelsea have been linked with Ronaldo, because guess what? They don't have a striker. And they're struggling behind City and Liverpool. Bayern Munich are not in that position. They're at the top of the tree in Germany. One of their main rivals has just sold one of the best players in world football, in Erling Haaland. There's a chance that with RB Leipzig and Kunku and one or two others, people will be sniffing around them. So the other sides have been weakened as well as Bayern Munich losing players. The other sides have been weakened as well to some extent. So although they've lost some players, so have others. So it's kind of an equilibrium in terms of the challenge. They've brought Sadio Mane in, and he will, wherever he plays, get a quota of goals and assists, and he's pacey, and he'll shut down, and he'll press, because that's what he did at Liverpool. And so I don't really see the need for Bayern Munich to go out and make this deal happen. I think there are some teams that could use Ronaldo short term, and the goals that he probably still will bring. But I just don't think Bayern Munich in their position are really desperate for that to happen.
Well, let's talk about another of the transfer rumours then. Neymar to your old club, Manchester City, Nadem. Do you like this idea?
No, but again, it's not because Neymar's not a good player. I just don't think they need him, especially if he's going to be playing off the left, because you look at this time now and you've got Jack Grealish there who's in his second season. You've got Phil Foden who spends a lot of time out there as well. So to be bringing somebody in to sort of stunt the development of those two players doesn't seem to add up to me. I understand he's got the pedigree and all that stuff. But yeah, I just don't see the need for that move in this moment, because for City as well, they tend to be sort of building, looking younger whenever they can. And it's that whole concept of future-proof. And again, I think for Neymar, as an outstanding player as he is, like this moment at Man City isn't the right moment, in my opinion, for him to go there. I think he'd obviously draw the crowd in, he'd score a ton of goals, get assists, but you know, City have the mentality where it's literally everyone is pulling in the same direction all the time, and it's not really about the tricks, the skills, it's about the hard work, the understanding, all this stuff. And I wouldn't say that's necessarily at the forefront of Neymar's sort of ability level. So I don't see it being a good move, and hopefully, you know, the agent's just putting some noise out there to try and get him something else, which he probably wants. But for now, yeah, it's a no-go for me.
We did make you put together a little 11, though, of how it might look if he were to go to Manchester City. Craig, do you like this? Do you think Guardiola would be able to get the best out of Neymar? Him setting up goals for Haaland there?
No, I absolutely hate it. I think it's a ridiculous notion for two reasons. One, City don't need him. And two, the last thing this coach wants is to be remonstrating with a player on the touchline that's not doing the same as the other players when they don't have possession. If you look at the two best teams in England at the moment, Liverpool and City, somebody are going to have to go and find me some stats of other teams that work harder when they don't have the ball. Forget when they have the ball, okay? Because we all know what they do and how they do it, and the movement and the passing and how dynamic they are. But when they don't have it, they work harder than teams that are about to be relegated if they don't win a game. That's the desire to get that ball back and keep that ball and pressurise the team. And everybody has to be on that page. And when you're not on that page at Manchester City, and Nadem says it more than me, you're off. The hook comes out, get off, and I'll bring somebody on that does. So he doesn't need that. The team doesn't need it because they've got enough talent, and the team doesn't need somebody to come in, and the manager doesn't need somebody to come in. Doesn't matter how talented he is, but he's not on the same page as every other one. Work rate always succeeds ability, because Guardiola knows how much talent these players have, but if you're not working hard, you don't play. And I'm afraid his reputation goes before him. He's a luxury, and Manchester City don't carry luxury players, because when you become that, you go and sit on the bench or you go and sit in the stand. That's the level that they have set and this manager has set. Why would you sign somebody in that's likely to fall beneath that level? I don't think. It's absolutely nuts to me.
We have already established on this show that social media doesn't sleep. So look at this. This is Mbappe looking to train there and take the hands of Neymar, but Neymar ignores that and waits for his mate Lionel Messi, and then training continues here.
And I don't know, maybe we're picking up on something here, but I don't know. But it looks to me as that just backs my point up. Why do you want a big baby at the club? Why? I don't want that in training. I'm waiting for my mate, or I'm not. You just don't need that.
Nadem, you're laughing. Does this spell trouble for PSG?
No. What I would say, having looked at the video again, if you really want to take a good look at it, Mbappe is never looking for Neymar. He's looking because he's about a yard ahead, so he's looking for that coach to come in. If you see that, he's not looking at him like, look, he's a yard ahead. So it's not that deep. If we want to be controversial, that's a disgrace what he's done there. It's an absolute shambles, and he should be banned from the club forever. He should speak to the VP, who's Mbappe or whoever it is now, and just get him out of the club. No, in all seriousness, like, I don't think that's that bad. And we can read into it however we want. And I think whichever side you're on will dictate how you see it. But I think I'm quite neutral, and it looks to me like that wasn't that bad. I'm going to say that.
He was waiting in Messi no matter what, wasn't
Yeah,
he? But I don't care about
It's all
stuff.
about the angles.
I'll be honest, I don't really care about stuff off the training ground and that. But at the end of the day, to go back to the original point, Manchester City do not need Neymar. And he doesn't need them, to be fair. Maybe he does, I don't know. He's got a World Cup coming up. But they've got a big challenge on again this year, across all fronts. They'll be hoping Jack Grealish steps up and improves on, I think, what was a pretty average season for him. Nedum's mentioned Foden, who, has got himself in one or two scrapes last year off the field, whether it's his fault or not. And I'm sure the manager's saying, look, I know you're a young man and you go out with your family and blah, 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 but sometimes you just got to be careful. That's the way of the world these days. People are ready to jump on you and make a big deal out of it. But all these players have improved every year, Riyad Mahrez, and I think he'll be looking for Jack Grealish to say, look, first year at the club, it was okay, but it wasn't startling. It wasn't what I expect from you. And all these players will be looking to get better, so they really, with Haaland coming in, don't need to be signing this kind of luxury player.
Well, if you would like to keep up to date with the latest about Neymar's future and every other transfer rumour, make sure to head on over to ESPNFC.com for our live transfer talk page. And don't forget, the Bundesliga is just around the corner. August 5th, it all kicks off for the new season with Eintracht Frankfurt taking on Bayern Munich. All of these games, as always, available on ESPN+. Arsenal just missed out on the top four last season after a string of poor results towards the end of the campaign. And after defeat away to Newcastle, Granit Xhaka questioned the mentality of his teammates. James Ollie asked him about this when they sat down together this week.
Do you feel the squad mentally is in a better place, a stronger place now, that when you get into those key moments next season, you will grasp it?
I hope so. I can't tell you now because we are too far to speak about this. But if the situation comes again, I think we have to be much clever, much different, in a different mentality. If something is not going well with the ball, we have to change the game. This happened against Palace as well away when we was smashed 3-0. We wanted to play. We lost balls and they scored. And first of all, you have to be ready to fight, and after you can do the other things. This is my opinion, and this is what Mikel wants as well from us, to be ready from the start. And we was not in the game from the start until the end.
Do you think English football generally, the top of the Premier League, is maybe harder than it's ever been to finish in the top four? When you think about how good Liverpool and City are, Chelsea are spending money again, and United are going to spend money again, Spurs are spending money. Is it, in your time in England, maybe the hardest it's ever been to get up there?
I believe that in England always was very difficult to be on the top four. Of course, now in the last maybe 10 years, a lot changes. A lot of money is much more in the different clubs. But I don't think so you can do everything with the money to achieve something. You can do it as well with less money. You have to be clever how you spend the money. This is maybe a different way. But of course, if you see the other 5 teams, they are doing well, they are spending a lot of money. Us as well. It's not like we are not spending money, we are not looking for new players or good players, quality players. But in the end, you have to find the team as well, how they are fitting together. Because you can spend 500 million a year, but if you have not the connecting between the players, it doesn't make sense.
Do you feel that connection at Arsenal coming with the new players?
Absolutely. Not only now with the new players, but even the last years. I can see that something is growing here, and sometimes you need more time than the people wanted. But I have a feeling that we are in a good way. And last season we was very close to achieve something. And this season, let's start a new season, and after we can speak again after 38 games, hopefully there where we want to be.
So here's a look at Arsenal's business so far, and it looks as though they could be bringing in Alexander Zinchenko along with Gabriel Jesus, who we already know is in. Nedum Manu is with us. Bringing in proven winners, players who've been at City, Craig, players who've won titles there, they have that winning mentality. Is this going to help Arsenal's mentality to do?
It's going to help the playing squad, and I think that's the most important thing. James Ollie was asking him about the difficulty getting in the top 4. Well, it wasn't that difficult last year because Tottenham made it in, and Tottenham, as you know, they've signed some really good players this summer, but when Conte went in, he thought, no, this is difficult, just because of the playing squad. It wasn't the greatest playing squad, but yet they managed to get in the top 4, and Arsenal would have done if they didn't implode at the end. So it wasn't, and Chelsea fell away after Christmas, and gave everybody else a chance. It's about mentality. He talks about, the mentality, and I have an issue with that in some sense, because last year, the bulk of the games, this Arsenal team were carried by youngsters in the attacking positions. It was Eddie Nketiah at the end, when Lacazette's form, just when he couldn't get in the goals. It was young Saka, who carried a lot of the burden. So did Odegaard, so did Emil Smith-Rowe, so did Martinelli. Yes, they didn't do it alone, but they carried a huge burden of the pressure, and they almost catapulted Arsenal into the top 4 after a shambolic start. So when he's talking about mentality, I'm looking at him and others of his ilk who are experienced international footballers, rather than talking about the mentality of failure on these young players who actually were the sort of 8 and 9 out of 10 most weeks in this Arsenal team. So I think when you're looking in the mirror at Arsenal over the last year or two, I think you're looking at the older players who've let them down at times, rather than the younger players who I think have actually grown in stature under the pressure that Mikel Arteta and this club were under.
And what do you think of these players coming in, Nadim, the ones that we just mentioned, in Zinchenko and obviously Gabriel Jesus already in there? Players that will help the cause at Arsenal, or are you looking at it as players that weren't good enough to be at Man City?
I think it's players that will help the cause, because for Zinchenko and for Gabriel Jesus, they were City for a lot of years, and they contribute to some of the success that City have had along the way. So I can't really say that they're surplus, but I think at City, the squad can be so deep sometimes that some people can get lost within it, and I think at times those two were that. But then to sort of put some respect on Zinchenko's name, I think it was a year ago he was playing in the Champions League final, played in the second semi-final against PSG, so we've trusted in the final stages of the significant part of the seasons for City. So I wouldn't say he's a bit part player, same way I wouldn't say for Jesus as well, because again he contributed very much so come the last game of last season against Villa, which won them the title. So I think for them going to Arsenal, I think seeing winners come through the door, in my opinion, was always exciting, because you kind of want to know how they did it, how City are doing things, trying to get behind the curtain on that side to understand what they're doing, and maybe see what you can do yourself as an individual, as a collective, in terms of the club as well. So they're bringing good experiences, positive mindsets, and also, to talk about Arsenal, that mentality thing, I think I agree with what Craig's saying. And I think worst of all for Arsenal, for me, is when you sometimes see the fixtures come out, you think, oh, I don't fancy them there. And it's never a case you don't fancy them there at like City away or Chelsea. It's like at Brentford away. It's at St James's Park. It's at Selhurst Park away in the midweek and stuff. But in those games, if they end up losing them, it's not because they've been outplayed. It's because they've had that little bit missing, that little bit, maybe it's a bit of character, a bit of desire, the mentality to know that it's not just about playing football. You have to fight as well, as he alluded to in his interview. And I think that is key, because having been somebody who's played as an underdog in the Premier League for a while, there are some teams where you know that you're not going to outplay them. So you try and get sort of like in their faces, make them uncomfortable, force them to be predictable, and try and sort of just like unsettle them basically. And I think Arsenal have been a candidate for that, whereas I think if you look at City, you look at Liverpool, it's very, very hard to ruffle their feathers. So for most teams end up just dropping off because they know stepping forward is the worst thing that you could possibly do. But stepping forward against Arsenal at times can be very beneficial. So I think with those two players coming in and understanding the places that they've come from, with the management, with the other players around them, their own understanding and desire of what it takes to win 10, 15 games in a row, to be having to start and play well if you want to play in the next game. That mentality surely has to be a good thing at Arsenal, because as they look around the squad, there's a ton of potential. But those two are coming in and they've seen it, they've felt it, they've won it before and lifted that trophy, and it's something that I imagine the rest of the squad aspire to feel.
They're not, to go back to your point, they're not bringing in two players that are, the surplus in terms of they're disposable as an asset by Manchester City, but they've been brilliant for the club. But it's their manager, it's Guardiola's pursuit of perfection that means one or two he'll allow to go, like Raheem Sterling, who has been a magnificent contributor for that manager and that club, but yet, through willing to let him go and the player wants to go, they've come to some sort of agreement. Jesus, obviously, he needs to score goals, clearly, and that's been a void because Lacazette's link-up play was good, but his goals return was not, and certainly last season. But you go back to Zinchenko if they can make this happen. That just gives him so many options because he's been a terrific left-back. He can play in the middle of the park, as he does for the Ukraine, his country, and does it very well, by the way. And also Arsenal have had a problem in that left side. Kieran Tierney's a terrific player, but I think Arsenal have a concern about Tierney's constant injuries. I think it's a worry for them. But if Tierney stays fit, it gives them the option, Arsenal, if they want to go to a back three, play Tierney or play a left-sided centre-back if they've got any other injuries, because Tierney can switch between left-back and left-sided centre-back, both in a 4 and in a 3. And Zinchenko can switch from left-back to midfield, and that gives much more options in terms of that left-hand side, which has been, I think, quite problematic for the reasons that I mentioned. So I think those two would be terrific signings for Arsenal, particularly if they can get the Zinchenko one done.
Something else that proved to be a problem for Arsenal last season was their disciplinary record. 9 straight red cards in the Mikel Arteta era, topping the league table in this aspect, 13 in total. Granit Xhaka was a part of this problem with his own record. He actually addressed this, though, back in December. He said that he feels that referees actually target him. Let's see what he had to say speaking to The Athletic back in December. He said, when I once got a red card, the ref said to one of my teammates, "You know how Granit is. He loses his head." Just because I lost my head against Burnley, for example, it's not like I lose my head every time. To put me in this box like this, I believe, is wrong. Well, let's welcome in a referee, shall we? Mark Clattenburg is with us. Is this true, Mark, what Granit Xhaka is saying here, that you do get a reputation and referees then do target you going forward in future games?
It's interesting when you hear Xhaka saying about the comments about he's targeted by referees. The problem is, Xhaka's type of challenges, the way he plays in midfield, he breaks the play down, he's always liable for a yellow card. But what I do see from his play usual is once he's given a yellow card or he's committed a foul, he goes straight to the opponent, he wants to be the hard man, and therefore he creates a problem. And this is what the referees look at. They watch all the video footage, they watch his type of challenges week in, week out, and his reaction. And what the players are doing, they're actually targeting him, not the referees, because the players, the oppositions, are trying to get him sent off. And after he commits a foul, they're in his face, and therefore he creates a reaction. And for this is why, he probably tried to blame the referees, but he has to look at his own behaviour.
I'm just seeing some of his behaviour, some of the incidents, this coming in for a yellow card against Norwich back in December, Craig.
Yeah, he gets involved when he gets involved, and as a player, you tend to learn, or you should do, as you get older. And look, I have a lot more respect for officials than I did when I was playing. A lot more. In fact, I think it's an unbelievably hard job.
Are you just saying that because Mark's here?
No, I'm not. I've said that. I've been on record saying that for a long time. As a player, I was blind to it, and all I could see was wrong decision. Why is the referee doing this? And I sit back in my role for the last 10 years, watching officials, and I realised actually how hard it is. And I got a lot of respect for the officials and how difficult the job is. But as a player, you got to understand, I was very vocal to referees, but sometimes you got to weigh up what the situation is. Let me tell you about Granit Xhaka. I saw quite a bit of the games. Granit Xhaka I have no problem sometimes with people being overzealous in challenges. As Mark mentioned, that's the kind of player he is. A lot of his yellow cards are also for petulant little flick-outs and kick-outs, right? And that gives him a problem later in games. I've seen him last year being booked in games and then being unable to make a challenge at say 85, 90 minutes on the edge of a box for fear of being red carded for a second yellow, and the other team have scored and Arsenal have dropped points. So himself as an experienced player, through his petulance, not only with petulant challenges but a petulant reaction, and Mark talked about that, is putting himself in a problematic position, because if it's 80 minutes and it's one each, and I saw one particular thing at Goodison last year, I think it was, and he couldn't make a 50-50 challenge because he was thinking, oh, I'm going to get sent off, I'm going to get a second yellow, and Everton scored. And so as an experienced player and as a captain, and you know, you have to make better decisions because it has an impact going forward in the rest of your game, and he doesn't. And he hasn't.
Nadim, do you agree with what Craig's saying, or do you think that Xhaka has a point when it comes to the refs?
No, I don't think well, he's obviously going to believe his own point because he's, you know, the star in his own story. But I think what Craig's saying is correct. Like, especially for some midfielders who are so combative, I see it sometimes, like they're really all about the pitch, chopping things up. But then the moment they get that yellow card, they just can't play the game to the same manner. So they're not even of the same value to their own team because they can't go and disrupt the way that they did before. And I think, as Mark was saying as well, you know, it's not necessarily just the tackle. It's the reactions to it, sometimes pushing people, getting in people's faces and stuff like this. And I'll be honest, you know, you can say referees target him and so on, but the opposition know what he's like. If Arsenal concede a lot of fouls, you can anticipate that Xhaka will be responsible for quite a few of those. And I think as an ex-player, there are certain teams and players you play against and you knew who the person who is like, it's not that you dislike them, but you'll lose your temper more easily with them, or try and get in their face more easily because you know you can wind them up, or you'll be more upset with them. Whereas for other people, it doesn't really matter, you don't know them. But for Xhaka, there'll be tons of players in the Premier League who, from the opposition, don't like him, don't like the way he fouls, don't like the way he gets in people's faces. So whenever they come up against each other, you can expect there will be something there, because people are going to press him and press him and press him, because they know at some point he will react. So this is something that he has to work on and understand, because if he's going to be the captain, if he's going to be the leader, he has to be available and he has to make sure that he can play the game to the highest standard for 90 minutes, because the moment he gets the yellow card, before you know it, he's getting targeted again. And then if he loses his head and gets angry, before you know it, that turns into a red, like the 4 red cards we're speaking of. You know, at some point you have to take accountability. This isn't just the referee coming after you. Like that there, this is a prime example. You know, that's a foul just to disrupt it. And then someone gets in his face because he doesn't like him, and he's frustrated, just like walk away. Just walk away. Just be that player that people get annoyed by, but walk away. But instead, he thinks he has to go and take on this next level here. And to do something like that with a guy who wasn't even involved in the tackle, what are you doing? You know, when people see that, when the opposition see that, other teams see that, why would you not go and attempt to do the same thing to sort of rile him in the next game? It just makes it too easy for the opposition, I feel, sometimes.
See, that's not a...
That's the game you mentioned, wasn't it, Burnley, in the quote that we saw earlier? It said, Granit Xhaka, it said, when I've done something like what I did against Burnley, referees then look ahead in other games. But he says he lost his head in that game.
You just can't... I mean, it was a yellow card challenge, and then he puts his hand around somebody's throat. Let me give you some context to Granit Xhaka. This is not new. This is not a new thing. And I'm afraid he's getting a bit long in the tooth to start learning new tricks. If you follow the Bundesliga, you'll know. If you don't, I'll tell you. And I looked at this when he first came to Arsenal, because he was picking up a lot of bookings, and I thought, oh, is it the Premier League? Is it maybe just a bit quicker and he's getting used to it? Go look at his record at Borussia Mönchengladbach. Go look at his record. He's got yellow cards for fun. So he came to Arsenal as a player who was picking up yellow cards, and maybe the referees in the Premier League are watching the Bundesliga and that's why they're picking on him. I think not. I think it's a player who just hasn't learned thus far. As a young player coming through, playing international football, playing in the Bundesliga, getting booked, I think the ratio is pretty similar, but I'd have to look at it to the Premier League. And it's just continued. It's been a continuation. And that's telling me that next year it's still going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for him, and unfortunately it's going to be a problem for Mikel Arteta.
So it's down to him, and it's down to him to
Well, it's carried all the way from Germany with him.
Well, let's take a look though, Mark. We're just looking back at that incident against Burnley. He obviously picked this one out where he did lose his head. And this is where he's saying that this is in future games where he does get targeted because referees have seen that this is what can happen with him. Is it fair that he thinks that maybe he does have that reputation?
I just think because he's Arsenal captain, I think he's trying to be a player. He's showing a bit of responsibility. He's probably over the top. When I refereed him for Switzerland, for example, he never had this type of problem. He's very, very well disciplined. But when he's playing for Arsenal, he's trying to be a leader. Maybe it's overstepped the mark. Players are starting to get into his face. They know he's got this reputation. He's probably a little bit more volatile. He hasn't got control of himself. So it's just a chance for other players to get into his face. And the referees have to deal with the aftermath. Probably the referee could probably try to control it earlier. But Xhaka needs to be able to control himself first before the referee can help him.
Okay, but Mark, in general, this incident aside, does that happen where a player might have a bad reputation that precedes him?
But this was a VAR incident. I think the referee example, he thought it was a yellow card. It was a VAR checked. He grabbed him by the throat. And when you grab a player by the throat, nobody will ever dispute this is going to be a red card. So if you do things, and sometimes it's petulant, you'll get a yellow card for a little flick out, a little push in the chest, which would normally automatically give you a yellow card, which means during the match, this type of player who's liable for a yellow card for a foul has got a chance to be dismissed. And therefore, it's a stupid yellow card. The referees don't like to give players a yellow card for stupid things like a little push. But with Xhaka, he just pushes it too much. And he's not cynical enough to do little things that probably you would get a warning to. He's automatically getting a yellow card, and therefore he's putting himself at risk. And when you look at this incident at Burnley, how you can accept to grab a player by the throat and expect this is normal, I can't understand why he thinks referees are going to target him.
Craig?
Well, he's at the right club for it. You know, Arsenal were the first club in Premier League history to amass 100 red cards. So he's in the Premier League, because the game never...
All records count.
The game never wasn't around before the Premier League started, apparently. But since they started having statistics on these kind of things, since the Premier League started, Arsenal were the first club, I think it was early 2022 or whatever it was, to get to 100 red cards. Now, we saw it with Gabriel as well last year. We saw it with other players. Just making bad decisions, and we know there's been a lot of red cards under this manager. I'm sure he's frustrated. I'm sure obviously Mikel Arteta does not want to lose players, but it's something he has to deal with. And I think it's players, look, if it's to stop a goal and you've got to make a challenge, hey, it happens. But if you're just stepping out, and I'm thinking back to one that Gabriel did last year in the middle of the park, I think it might have been on Gabriel Jesus, it's just crazy. And they have to cut out the crazy decision makings that are costing yellows, and then a second yellow, or these straight reds. It is a problem for them, and it costs them, you could say it cost them a place in the top 4 last year. They did implode at the end, but all these things rack up during the course of a year. And as I say, as a midfielder with that responsibility, I know late in the game, if the game's tight, I might have to make a 50-50 challenge to save a goal, to get 3 points, to get a point. But if I'm facing a possible red card and a suspension, I'm kind of thinking twice about it, and that's putting my team under even more pressure. So I think Granit Xhaka, like one or two, have to look in before they look out.
Let's see if they can get it in check this season. Craig Burley and Nader Manoa are going to have... Oh, Craig with his teddy bear. Yes, we need this. Nice behaviour. Because we actually have a referee on tonight's Extra Time. Dan Thomas's bike. You can always keep up to date by subscribing to YouTube. Group B concluded in the Women's Euros today, and it was a direct showdown between Spain and Denmark to find out who would be facing England in the quarter-finals. With a look back on all of it, here's Sebi and the team.
Thank you very much, Kay, Julie, and Steffi with me here in the studios. We wrapped up Group B today, which means we now have 5 of the 8 quarterfinalists set. here at Euro 2022. And we know out of Group B, it's going to be Germany and Spain joining that last 8. So here's a look at some of the matchups we can expect come the knockout rounds. We're going to get England against Spain. We're going to get Germany against Austria. And we know France are through to the quarterfinals then out of Group D. So we saw Spain get the job done today. Just 1-0 over Denmark. Do we think Spain have any chance then against England, Julie, in that quarterfinal?
Always a chance. You're Spain, you're good, you're holding the ball, you're going to make it difficult. But I just think the two systems match up perfectly. They're both playing a 4-3-3, and we've seen how good England is in the flanks, which is really the area that Spain has struggled. And so I think with Hemp on one side, Mead on the other, how good they've been playing. You have to also has Lucy Bronze coming in from that outside position, Rachel Daly on the other side. I just think there's too much on England for Spain to deal with, and they're going to get overrun.
What did you think of Spain, Steffi?
They're going to get overrun. She took my words. Yes, right. That's what I think so too. But you know what? I mean, maybe Spain analyzed their 3 games that you got to shoot on the goal if you want to,
Is that how it works?
And maybe they also saw that coming over the wings. I mean, the substitutions were really good in the second half for Spain. So if they use that quality they have, picking up pace, then we will see a game, England-Spain, that we would love to see. I mean, just like...
Could be a final.
Yeah.
It's a great game. It's going to be a good matchup.
So there's everything to play for them between Spain and Denmark. Not exactly the case between Germany and Finland. Germany was already top of the group. Finland already eliminated from any shot at the knockout rounds. Still, Germany scored 3 goals, keeps the clean sheet, rotates some players. I think you have to feel really good about where Germany is right now, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I feel as comfortable as they feel. I mean, you know, they were not called as the favorites. Now that is over. I mean, now everybody knows how strong Germany is, really compact, really solid, and they got the opportunities to change. And if anyone drops out like Schüller, then
Schüller right now out with COVID. Alexander Popp comes in and gets the goal. It really is a deep team.
Look at that stat, Steffi. 2005 team. I know a player.
I was on the team, and I'm a little proud of it because it was really a great tournament.
Yeah, and you won it.
Yeah.
And you won it. You think this German team right now is your favorite?
Well, I am German, so I will always go with Germany. But I had the Spain, and I also think like we saw it. The English team, the host, I always would.
Yeah. And I think France has looked really good. Yes, missing Katoto, their top goal scorer, I think hurts a ton. Yeah. But I think England is thrilled. They're as far away on the other side of the bracket as they can be from France and Germany.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's Spain and Germany out of Group B. Tomorrow we find out about Group C. That's it for us here in the studio, Kay. Back to you.
Thanks, Sebi. For more content on the Women's Euros, be sure to check out our YouTube page, ESPN FC. Chelsea are in action against Club America as well tonight. You can catch that 10 Eastern on ESPN Plus and ESPN Deportes. They are in Las Vegas. It's a pre-season fixture. It's Chelsea's first game of the summer. That will do it for the latest edition of ESPN FC, but we'll be back. Craig will be answering your questions, maybe talking about fluffy toys. Mark Klassenberg and Nader Manua are going to be with us too, so stick around. That's up next. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. Craig Burley and Kay Murray here with you in the studio. You know why? Because I've got in my head all those teddy bears from yesterday's show, and I wondered if you brought any of them in.
It was a little cove of something.
Of delights.
Just different things were coming up. Porcupine, small bike, T-shirt, everything.
Yeah. And then there was the "Just Be You" quote.
Well, but obviously that's not me.
Well, I mean, you are always just yourself.
My wife. I am myself. Yeah, just be you. But you don't want to know me. But that's my wife. By these things, you know, these little messages.
You're blaming it on the wife.
Not that important. It's in the back of that house. That bit of the house where my little. And it's not a studio. It's a freaking camera and a chair. It was like nobody uses it in there, so it can't be that good a picture. You know
It's not bad. I wonder what Mark Klassenberg and Nader Manua have got in their houses. Any fluffy toys? I know that Nadem's actually brought some fluffy toys on the show before. Mark doesn't look like he's got any fluffy
Just
toys
one.
around him. No, they're joining us tonight for extra time. Raise your game, lads. All right, first question.
You know,
We'll try.
I once did this show years ago with a box in my head. I'm being serious.
I've seen the pictures.
When I was still living in the UK and I was doing it from London, from IMG, Tommy Smith, who was on at the time, used to have back in the good old days, had his top 25 of teams of the week or something. 25. Xhaka's lazy, he does 10.
Top 25.
Told me these top 25, and Pete Van Leer was shouting in my ear, react to it, Craig, react to Tommy's top 25. And I'm like, I'm looking around this room thinking, what am I going to do? I found this box, just emptied it out and put it in my head. I was like, I think that sealed the deal for this move, you know.
I think it might have.
That's all you need to do if you want to move here at ESPN. Put a box in your head. You get a job here.
They expected you to keep it on though, and now you've taken it off.
Well, I'm not that bad,
No, and you've been here a while, so they're obviously happy with what they've got. First question is for you.
I'm not sure about that.
Question for Craig. What is the percentage chance of Lewandowski... I know, it's like a Don question. What's the percentage chance of Lewandowski finishing with 50 goals next season with Barca in La Liga, having Rafinha and Dembele as wingers, and those bullet crosses coming in from both ends?
Slim. Yeah. Oh, percentage, I'll give you, I'm thinking Don. I'm trying to think like Don now. No, I would imagine him repeating that in Spain, different league. You know, a lot of good defenders there as well. 10% chance.
All right, under or over 30 goals for him?
I think he could just sneak over 30. 50 would be a big ask again.
All right, fair enough. Next question is for Mark.
What's Benzema been getting? You know, he's maybe, if he gets a 30,
going on the up,
yeah,
hasn't he,
35, something like that. So you've got to have an extra 15 on top of that in La Liga. That's tough.
Okay. Yeah, Messi and Ronaldo, they used to be up there, didn't they, with 40s and 50s?
Yeah, but he's 33.
Okay.
They were doing it in their 20s.
Mark, were there any teams or stadiums in the Champions League you dreaded being assigned to, knowing you were in for a tough night from either players, managers or hostile fans?
Atletico Madrid for sure. It was one of the most difficult before the move to the new stadium. The old stadium, it was one of them places where it was always difficult. The atmosphere, the coach Simeone always made it difficult. He whipped the fans into a frenzy half the time. And for me, it was one of the most difficult. And they had difficult players that used to try and get in referees' faces. So always one of them places I used to dread.
The Vicente Calderon.
Go on, Mark. Give us a club in England where the fans were just the most horrible to you.
Oh, without doubt, Everton. Without doubt, Everton. On a night match at Goodison. It was one of those special places.
Why were they so hot? Why? Was there a bit of history there, or
yeah,
what?
I'm a bit surprised to hear that.
Come on, Craig. Yeah, probably. Craig, because I've messed up many times at Everton. Probably the Derby day didn't help in 2006. So therefore, they'll always remember it. But Everton was always, it didn't matter if they won, they still didn't like us. So there was one of them places I just couldn't ever win.
Nadem, did you ever play in a pre-season friendly that was not at all friendly and got a little too violent?
Not really, no, I don't think. There were a couple of like players who'd be sort of fine or whatever, but overall, the mindset was, you know, it's pre-season, and you know the manager might want to see you fight from you, but he doesn't actually want to see you fighting. So I don't think there wasn't too much. I think the only thing I'd say is the honourable mention was seeing Vincent Kompany kick Samuel Eto'o for 90 minutes straight in America on one pre-season tour. But aside from that, it tended to be quite calm, to be honest. It was more so just about the football.
It wasn't a pre-season friendly, but it was a World Cup warm-up match.
Right.
In the US. My memory's not that great. I think it was in Miami, but it was against Colombia. And that was an eye-opener. It was either, no, it might have been a Euro warm-up match for Euro 96, whatever it was, but it was a warm-up match against Colombia. And I'd never, at that point in my career, as I think I was quite new to the Scotland team, but then it was Euro 96, I hadn't played against the South American team before, international team. That was an eye-opener. Not to suggest that we're all the same, but let me tell you, this particular group of Colombians, they thought a two-footed high tackle around the knee was the norm. Honestly, and we were preparing for the European Championships. I don't know what they would be preparing for at that point, because obviously it wasn't a World Cup year. but they were. I mean, it was leg breaking stuff, and that was an eye opener.
Yep, getting ready for those CONMEBOL World Cup qualifiers.
I mean, those boys down there, they can put a tackle in.
Absolutely.
Rough and tough.
Mark, it feels like there is so much inconsistency in when VAR leads to an official's decision being changed. Any changes in policies you would like to see to help bring more consistent decisions?
Probably the accuracy of the decision making of the referee would help, because probably what causes the most frustrating thing that we see is that the referee gives a decision and he probably doesn't give the penalty, which everybody thinks it's a penalty, and then the VAR says we support the referee's decision. It's not a clear and obvious error, and therefore it leads to two inconsistent and wrong decisions. So I would prefer that the referee gives the decision and doesn't need the VAR, and only use the VAR when it's an absolute necessary, clear and obvious mistake where everybody believes that it's a mistake. And I think, we just see when the referee goes to the on-field review screen, it's inconsistent. 1 week it is, 1 week it isn't. And I think that's what frustrates everyone. The referee just went back to the basics and made the decision on the field without the fear, and it was backed up where it was a complete wrong decision. And then the VAR would help them out, and that would probably help the system.
We've got lots of questions for Mark today.
Good, well that's good. I just want to say that the one thing I would like to see, and make it happen quickly, is please 99.9% of the time, if you can, leave the decision, make the decision be made by the on-field official. So for example, if somebody in VAR at Stockley Park is rock and rolling the VT umpteen times as you see it, then they're not sure. Just get in the referee's ear and say, have a quick sprint to the monitor and have a look. I'd rather that happen than somebody in Stockley Park taking 3 minutes or 2 minutes or a minute and a half to keep rocking and rolling a video. Oh, I'm not sure. Oh, I'm not sure. Just quickly send the on. I really want the decisions to be made either in real time or by a quick sprint to VAR by the official who is the guy who's been delegated that day. That's all I want. Just so please, for example, the one at the non-penalty call in Rodri at Goodison last year. For God's sake, and if memory serves me right, the referee was not asked to go, after missing it, was not asked to go to the VAR, when I don't think I've met anybody alive that's seen it that doesn't think it was a penalty. So just say to the referee, quick trot to the monitor, go on, get over there now and make a quick decision. But it was left to I believe it was left to the VAR.
Right.
And it was clearly wrong. It has to be, the buck has to stop with the actual referee at the match, whatever way that is. Mark, do you not agree? Stockley Park is there to aid and abet, but would you not, if you were refereeing a game and we had this technology, when you walked out of there at 5:30 or whatever time it was, I think you as a referee, a top referee, would like to have known that you had the final say in all the big decisions at this game.
Yeah, I think, Craig, what the problem you've got is, I think it's took the power away from the referee to make the initial decision. I think the referees have lost, we call it bottle, for example. They haven't got the courage to actually whistle the decision and to think, you know what, I'm not sure, therefore I'll leave it to the VAR, which causes the inconsistency. When I was a referee, I didn't have the technology. I went with a lot of experience. I went with a lot of clues, because you didn't see exactly the whole situation, but you had all the clues around and you whistled a penalty, and 99% of the time you were correct. But now they're not whistling it. The guy in Stockley Park, okay, I support the referee's decision, and they both get it wrong. I totally agree with what you say. When I was a referee with VAR, for example, I want to know when I've made a decision that I can clear it from my head. I've made the decision, I want to go and see it on the screen, and therefore I can justify it to the players. Look, I've seen it again and I'm happy with my decision. But to rely on somebody in Stockley Park to give us a decision, I don't feel comfortable that I can move on in the match to clear that decision for the next one.
All right, this might actually go to pre-VAR. For Mark, how do referees recover from making a bad decision that costs the other team a victory, such as giving a penalty for a dive or being tricked into giving a red card to a player?
Yeah, you always say 2 wrongs don't make a right. It's one of the most difficult things in refereeing, that you've made one wrong decision. Maybe you find out at half time, maybe the TV company is clearly wanting to tell you as you're walking down the tunnel at half time, or one of the coaches are trying to put an iPad in your face to say, look, you've made a clear wrong decision. However, I think referees now are at such a professional level. Yes, they can make mistakes, but they don't want to make another mistake, and therefore they'll accept that they want to get the next decision correct. And for me, you want to make as many right as wrong. However, we talk about balance in football. Yes, we don't want to make, a wrong decision, 2 wrong decisions to make a right decision. However, we need to analyse football and try to bring some balance back into the matches, that we don't have all the wrong decisions, for example, against one club, because that will cause more controversy.
It does kind of half lead on to the next one.
David Ellery gave a penalty kick in the 1994 FA Cup final that I played in for a challenge from Frank Sinclair. I think it was on Andrew Kanchelskis. Now, Andrew Kanchelskis was very quick, and that might have skewed the decision, but he was 2 yards outside the box. Well, it didn't affect the result because we were already getting beat. But, you go back to the Championship playoff game as well, where, I don't know for those who saw it, Nottingham Forest and Huddersfield, there was 2 Huddersfield decisions that didn't go their way, and the referee, I believe, wasn't asked to go to the monitor, and that was the only game in that whole season worth 150 million or whatever it was that had VAR. It was the only game, and the referee wasn't asked to go to the monitor. It looked like 2 stone wall penalties for Huddersfield, and that's potentially cost them a place in the Premier League and all that money. So
hundreds of millions we always get told about when it comes to that game.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, I was going to say, what Mark said there took me back to a game which Mark refereed, which I was playing in, and I think he sent off Adel Taarabt in the match. And it was a weird decision, but then like a couple of minutes later, he was saying that, I think maybe I got that one wrong. And like, it really diffuses you as a player when the ref like kind of admits that he's a human being. And you're like, oh, well, okay, I guess that's fine then. Instead of some of the other ones where like, they've made a mistake and they know they've made a mistake, but they're just adamantly saying like, no, go away, you're wrong and all this. And then that's when you get like really, really wound up as a player. But I've got to give you credit for that, Mark. You were spot on that day. And I literally can't forget it, because I thought, well, I don't know what to say now.
The problem was, and this is sometimes that happens, I think I gave him a second yellow card for kicking the ball away. And for me, with all the experience, I should never ever have to issue a second yellow card and just send a player off for kicking the ball away. I think it was QPR Tottenham, if I remember rightly. And you're just thinking to myself, why, as an experienced referee, would I get involved in such a decision? And sometimes, you're caught in the emotion. Sometimes we're talking about Xhaka, for example, getting in referees' faces. Taarabt, for example, was one of these volatile players, probably got under my skin, and therefore I probably jumped at a decision that when you get a bit of experience, you don't get involved in.
I love the old referees. It just reminds me so much of, it was probably just before your time, Mark, well it would have been, but a Scottish referee called Willie Young. Willie was brilliant, right? And he wasn't the fittest referee, but he could get around. But Willie used to give it back in spades. So I used to think Willie used to get so much stick, but he used to just brush it off. And he does after dinner, or he was doing after dinner speaking for quite a while, and he was very good. But some of the stories he was told were true. He did say to me in a big game once, when I was giving him dog's abuse, and he did say, any more of that, Burley, and you'll be visiting your teeth in the dressing room, right? Which made me laugh. And he just took the heat out of the situation. And then one time I was jogging back, right, as usual, and he ran past me. Willie ran past me. He went, he says, how are you getting a game for Celtic? Even I'm quicker than you. As he was running past me. It's brilliant. And then, honestly, Mark, one time he said to me, the crowd were booing, right? They were booing Willie, right? But he said to me, as the crowd were booing, boo, and he went to me, as somebody was about to take a goal kick, and he went, can you hear that, Burley? I went, what? He went, the crowd are booing you, that's how bad you've been. So he could, you know, Willie knew, he said they're killing him, the crowd's killing him, but he turned it on me. He said, you're having that bad a game, they're booing you, they hate you more than me, all that kind of stuff. I just loved that, you know, the referee, with a little bit of, yeah, they had a job to do and we were under pressure, but a bit of humility either way. So I was giving him a bit too much stick, and that was Willie's way of saying to me, hey, come on, shut up and get on with your job, rather than just give me the old headmaster treatment, yellow card, you know what I mean, for talking to him. Willie would just give me a bit of sarcasm, or any player of that at that time. It was brilliant.
I think what we've established today is that Craig and Nadem love referees. So there you go, Mark.
I do.
Big fans of referees here. Thanks so much for sending in your tweets and your questions. Sid Lowe's going to be with us tomorrow to explain Barca's finances, because, let's be honest, we're all confused.
Yeah.